Now, as a forward, I feel like this video should have been made a long time ago because it's May 4th, 2026, and okay, I'm getting really annoyed with my eyes always looking like they're way off in the corner. I'm just gonna keep looking at the lens, whatever. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna keep looking at the lens. So it's May 4th, 2026, and a video like this is way past due. Somebody has to say it, what I'm saying here and stuff. At this point, the process addiction concerning video games has claimed the lives of way too many people. I've seen it myself and stuff. I've seen cases going as far back as the early 2000s with some of my childhood friends. Childhood friends that were, you know, that I kind of grew up with. They were 9, 10 years old that were developing, um, you know, that were basically going through mental regression and stuff through repeated mental burnout from being process addicted to these games. They were not getting medical care and stuff. They were not cleaning their living spaces, um, which was which of course entails later on some pretty serious issues and stuff, infections. They were getting asthma attacks and stuff. Um, I, they were showing clear signs of behavior disorder and stuff. It's a problem. It's a problem, and um, it wasn't as severe of a problem back then and stuff because of how online gaming wasn't as popular. Um, but yeah, it's done quite a number on many people's lives and stuff. From what I've seen, people who are addicted to these games and stuff, it's games of a certain type, and I think it's most games. They it, they show emotional instability, they show poor attention, um, lack of higher thinking and stuff, poor educational outcomes and whatnot. Um, it's it's a lot like social media. It's like a digital form of heroin and stuff. And which is strong language, but it's true. Um, Most games fall into this category. They're just poorly balanced, but very attractive games and stuff. Games that leverage the user experience design in a certain way to tease you with, you know, gameplay loops and in-game currencies and other moments of reward and stuff. Um, but we'll go into more details here about how they work and stuff, the psychological tactics that are used. Like it's basically a digital manipulation worker that that basically drives, you know, effectively drives a person crazy to lose their mind. Um, so here, and this is what leads to the process addiction. You know, first, like there is an attempt for a person to strengthen their mind when they approach a game and stuff. Um, on paper, games are a mental activity, right? But that, you know, that tentacle is part of a larger octopus, very angry octopus with sharp suckers and a very sharp, big, aggressive beak, And um, now, in a balanced or fair video game, you have outs and stuff. There's a consistent way to execute a dynamic or monolithic, repeatable formula to win consistently and stuff. And this is one example right here, Puzzler, that I'm gesturing with my mouse. Um, and then this is another one too. This is a balanced game and stuff. This is just a puzzle game. Puzzle game strategy, like a turn-based strategy. Those are fine and stuff. Once you start getting to real-time strategy, you really run a risk for games that are just not balanced for reasons I will explain. Um, this is pretty balanced here too. There's some RNG in there. You have to be careful not to get sucked into that. Um, and yeah, so this is basically what these games do. They tease you, they surprise you, they perplex you, they try to overload you and stuff. Like I talk about overloads in my previous chess video and stuff. It's a very similar concept and stuff. It's basically like giving you more than your character can actually handle um, at once or in the future after many turns and stuff, to where you just like you end up taking statistical positional damage, not spatial positional damage and stuff, though that does happen too. You end up taking the statistical positional damage that just leads to you losing and stuff, and that one um, damaging moment leads to another and stuff, which is arguably a universal concept in games that involve strategy, right? These games troll you and stuff. Um, of course, some of the adversaries, like the games have adversaries that just harass and stuff. Adversaries that can overrun you whenever they want to. Adversaries that can pop up and undermine your position whenever they want to and stuff. You know, the game disrupts you, and it costs you and stuff. Like suddenly the in-game currency costs, or whatever you're spending, the time, the energy, whatever, just suddenly goes up, and to where it becomes unreasonable to continue, but you're already continuing and stuff because you know you've become this game's guinea pig. Um, you know, it uses bait and switch. There's a lot of bait and switch and stuff. Some examples, like some baits, are the in-game payments of experience points or currency and stuff. Unlockable equipment. The Now the thing about the baits is that they're usually a form of reward and stuff, including relief, like having a relief from a very like uncomfortable, uninteresting position and stuff, or a situation. Maybe like a cutscene that's just really irrelevant to what you're paying attention to, or annoying and stuff that just that you just can't skip. Um, I think unskippable cutscenes, a lot of the time, are just an aspect of user experience design that are meant to, you know, keep you, like, hold you into the game longer and stuff. But yeah, these baits are rewards that are basically put after some very um, disruptive and you know like uh, annoying problem that just kind of builds a chronic frustration and stuff. The game can halt you. The game hides things like certain valuable information or whatever. Um, the game enables bad behavior by rewarding errors, so you have like the consumer training aspect where you're kind of trained to fail. A lot of tutorials have that for sure. Um, it's, um, you have the random changes of experience, distractions, and then the game tries to like please you and stuff. It teases you with a rewarding gameplay loop that is not guaranteed, despite the skill level a lot of the time. Inactionable fact changes. The game robs you sometimes too. Some games just straight up take your in-game currency and stuff for one reason or another, but it does happen. Uh, the game will terrify or menace you and stuff. And because this is in that situation, you don't have control over it and stuff. Like, you're going to be in a losing position, and a lot of time you'll be lucky to stalemate, or to just come out with that last point of health, which is obviously just like it's a clear attempt at manipulation and stuff. Um, the game withholds things to create work, which kind of goes into the bait and switch aspect and stuff. The game can influence you, it influences your player actions and stuff. It can threaten you. It can you can change speed during player action. You betray pattern recognition or fake out. So if you attempt to form some kind of pattern recognition or understand what's going on, the game just tricks you and stuff, or it basically forcing a loss, and then suddenly like you're just like messed up in your conditioning and stuff. Um, Games definitely mess up your these games that we're talking about, these horribly balanced games that also tend to be not that are not fair. You know, they do that. Uh, you know, there's games that narrow your options and stuff. There's games that use rough difficulty scaling or linearized difficulty scaling and stuff. You know, um, this is arguably that's one of the worst features there, the rough difficulty scaling or linearized difficulty scaling, because you know it messes with your conditioning and stuff. It actually trains you not to learn and stuff, which is just, I mean, it's heinous. It's a heinous user experience design, because I think what people don't realize is that the environments we spend that we what we focus on and stuff kind of becomes our mind and stuff. It forms our habitus, our thought patterns and stuff, our emotional patterns and stuff, and you know the brain the brain can live in that and stuff and be caught off guard by that and stuff. You know, I think everybody knows somebody that kind of pulls them into games and stuff. Then there's these games, they also reach out into real life, which you don't necessarily control. Like the game will just mess up your console or PC and stuff. And I'm not, and I know it seems like I'm saying that this is a deliberate attempt on the developers here and stuff. It doesn't matter and stuff. This is what the user experience is now because of the software doing that and stuff. That's damage done to the player, you know. Um, so, oh yeah, these games that get out of hand with or without immediate overload and stuff. You know, games that try to make it seem like they're they're not immediately screwing with you and stuff by getting out of hand, but not showing it visually within a certain time frame. But later on, it comes, and that's that's very chicaning and stuff. Um, a lot of these video games that we're talking about, they're basically like electronic chicaners, like electronic chicaner workers, you know. Um, and undersupplying, this is a big one and stuff. The undersupplying, like bait, gambit, and stuff, is something that games love to throw at the player. It's like, okay, we're just gonna give you like one magazine of ammo and one med kit, and you have all of this, and we know you're gonna go for it anyway and stuff, because not just because of the rewards and stuff, because of like all the marketing surrounding it and stuff or whatever, or because the player is kind of like in this adrenaline fueled mode where they're just going to want to test themselves and stuff, when in actuality it's not. It makes no rational sense to attempt this, you know, because this is not, it's not like an intellectual moment. It's like you're just like reacting, um and with that, that's a moment where games, um and when games can't take advantage of that, they do things to shut off your cerebrum and stuff, or your thyroid and stuff, by causing an adrenaline response and stuff. Basically, throwing like horror imagery at you and stuff, um, it, or very loud noises, um, or making you fight out of impossible positions and stuff. Um, Positions that are clearly statistically lost and stuff. Positions that any rational player would avoid in in a fair game, such as chess, or you know or a puzzle game or something, um, or one of those nice simulators, like, yeah. So anyway, I've been going on about this for like almost 15 minutes. I think I've kind of made my point and stuff. I've let you know that, by letting you know that what these games are doing, and uh, imploring you to just please, please don't play these dumb games and stuff. Like, uh, and I think we all know what games we're talking about and stuff. They're not just games that are presently there and stuff, but just the games that always have that random element you don't really control and stuff, that bait you to just keep playing it over and over. Um, it's you know it's basically building into a process addiction. You know, we could also talk about uh, like with the DLC based matchmaking and stuff. This is a feature that was patented by a company that I cannot mention in around 2015 and stuff. Basically, the code allows a developer to give improved, to give more favorable matches to players that bought um, a certain item and stuff. Uh, like in the game that I'm talking about, they would match you with players that didn't have a DLC weapon that was very powerful if you bought that DLC weapon. So that automatically, shifts the game and so like to where people can't really control what happens next. Um, kind of forcing the other player to be furtive and have a worse experience. It's just what it is. So yeah, but no, I've made my point sufficiently here and stuff. And I'm saying this with like 30 years of experience in gaming. I played many games, and I can tell you that this is what they do. And I've seen some horrible, horrible cases. People spending 10 hours a day playing World of Warcraft. Almost dropping out of school, and the kids that I mentioned that I kind of grew up with. Um, yeah, it's the process addiction to those poorly balanced games. That's a horrible, horrible. That's a horrible, horrible addiction.